wonderful ideas, suggestions for guests and topics.
Great events, programs, and all the countries, and listen to
Welcome to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. I'm your host, Lawrence Payne. To those joining us perhaps for the first time here for HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, we can be found now every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m. As always, at the top of the hour, let me thank you for your thoughtful emails, calls, and text messages concerning previous shows we've aired here on HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, for after all, this is your community affairs, public affairs show. We also wonderfully thank you for your suggestions for topics and guests and subjects to be covered as we move into our wonderful season of 32 years of doing this, and look forward to you joining us and being part of the ongoing dialogue, not only for the rest of this year, but some exciting things we have coming up shortly for the new year. If you've been following us on the previous segments, we've been talking about the future of not only African Americans and Black people, the future of this country, of this nation, of democracy, because what affects one group affects us all. And we're all in this together. It's not a question of I and them, it's a question of we and us. Not a question of I and me, it's we and us. It's not those people, it's not them people, it's all of us together. And somehow we're gonna have to figure out how to make that togetherness a reality. And the problems that each of us bear, the disproportionate issues of poverty and other stigmas and other intractable kind of things, inequities, all that should be something that everyone is not only aware and concerned about, but also take responsibility to help alleviate that suffering in other human beings around us. That's our calling. To help us understand that calling, as what does it mean to be a fully developed human being in service to other human beings, I'm very happy to have Dr. Fred Smith join us. He's the regional director of the Jesse C. Fletcher Seminary. Sorry about that, Fred.
Hey, we used to say the same thing when
we all do it. And I'm a seminarian student also, so yeah, that's how I felt sometimes, though.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jesse C. Fletcher Cemetery. That's good. Seminary. All right. So here we go. Dr. Smith, Fred, you're so good at this. You have been doing this for years in different ways, in different junctions, in different positions, in different places, in different contexts. But it always comes back to this wonderful thing that you have helped me understand, the role and need to understand with clarity what public theology is and how that can help us in this quest to try to figure out and work through this morass that we're in now, because right now it's almost intractable to try to figure out what to do and where we fit. So help us out.
Well, first of all, let me be clear about what my understanding of public theology is. Now, I'm what's called a practical theologian.
Right.
So I don't get caught up in a lot of metaphysics, in those kinds of things. However, there's a basic conceptual framework that has a moral, ethical compass to which everything that I do, no matter in what context, is my direction.
Right.
And that's how I understand the ethical moral framework for activity and action. It is the same one that Martin Luther King used. And Martin Luther King did not invent the concept of the beloved community. It was founded around the turn of the century by a professor by the name of Josiah Royce. Josiah Royce was one of the American pragmatists, with John Dewey, with William James, and Charles Peirce, with all those groups who really shaped the fifth philosophy that shaped much of America today, for the better or for the worse. He had two primary concepts that joined together. One was the concept of loyalty. Okay, I want to begin with that because you talked about trust.
Right.
And the basis of loyalty is trust. And it's not just trust to one another, but trust to a cause that is greater than oneself.
Mm-hmm.
That for him was the ultimate goal or aim or moral concept, is that you have able to give your being over to something, to a cause that's greater than yourself. For him was Christianity, but it could be democracy.
Mm-hmm.
It could be any other concept, including the negative side, Nazism, or a lot of what we're seeing today in Make America Great type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the basic notion is that we need to be oriented towards something that's transcendent, something that is beyond ourselves. Okay, and this, what I think, is the core, of what the struggle has been for the African American people and other peoples in this country since its inception. It is that basic concept. And you talked earlier about loyalty to your people, loyalty to your community, loyalty to your church, loyalty to your God. And I want to end with that one, is loyalty to God. So that's the basic. A public theologian seeks to express that publicly. Okay,
Right.
And seeks to express publicly. I don't want to go too far with this. What my major orientation is towards God in this ethical understanding. The beloved community is a commitment to a universal love ethic. Okay, and people may not understand, but with King was a part of a long line. Josiah Royce really impacted World War I, or almost did, by creating the pacifist movement based on the concept, that every human being is of ultimate worth to God. Based on the concept that we ought to structure our society according to love and justice. And the notion that diversity doesn't shrink us, but diversity enlarges us, and it helps us to appreciate our understanding of God himself, since we're all created in God's image. And even more than that, and I think this is what the battle is that we are part of a narrative, of a story that we are helping to create as we move along. And as we understand that narrative, we understand what our role and activity ought to be in the world, and how we ought to respond to other people who are making that same kind of journey. And what differentiates the public theology that I'm talking about is that there's always any story that enters, whether it's Black, white, LGBTQ, each story leads towards hope, and hope to understanding that you are loved unconditionally and forever. Now that's Pollyanna, that's something that, as you mentioned before, is not the existence, but it's something that we always worked for. Now, when we begin to talk about what's happening now is not any different than what has happened in the entire history, especially of African Americans in this country. And I want to look at it in a little different way, okay?
Okay.
Because much of our focus always has been on what is happening to us in this country, in the South, or in our cities right now. But one of the things that King talked about in his last book, From Community to Chaos, or Chaos to Community, was that we are part of a world house. Okay, that our fortune is not just tied to what the mega folks or Tea Party, whoever are doing, it's also tied to what is going on globally. You mentioned the defense budget. One reason why we don't have universal health care, or many of the things other countries have, because we spend over a third of our GNP on defense to maintain the largest armies, navy, and air forces in the world. Only competitor is China right now, who is spending as much as we are almost. But I want to lift up a story, that I'm listening to now, called "The Warmth of Other Suns" by Isabel Wilkerson. She also wrote a book called Caste. And what she talks about is the Great Migration, okay, that took place. And if you look at the migrations that took place, they were most of them, and the impetus, even for the civil rights movement and what's happening, started with World War, well, not just the Civil War, of course, brought emancipation, and in a period of time where all these things that we're talking about now that we want, we had for a brief period of time until the backlash came, okay? And Jim Crow took over. But then something happened. World War I happened, okay? And the immigrants from Europe was cut off. And the northern industry and the war machine needed Black folks, cheap labor, which was us, who was cotton pickers, north. And the migration began north. And people, and African Americans who participated in World War I for the first time got outside the South and saw the world, and that there was a different possibility. And so much of the first movement that took place after the Reconstruction and when Jim Crow started and everything was pushed back, really was related to World War I, where people began to escape the South and understand that there was something better and that things wasn't the way it ought to be. The next major move came with World War II, and with the similar issues took place, where the country needed to mobilize and industrialize, and people off to war, and so there was a need from the South, another great migration. Many of Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, what you see now is a result of that war that went on. And again, they came back with a different understanding of what democracy and what they were fighting for, and that laid the groundwork for the civil rights movement. Most of the people who went through the civil rights movement, were veterans. Many of the leaders were veterans, not just the youth who came out and understood through that issue. Now, I don't want to take too much time with that, but right now, we've seen another retrenchment. I'm waiting to hear what are the rulings are coming from the Supreme Court right now, as it has to do with affirmative action, and it has to do with voting rights, that has to do with all those things that was hardwired fund, and there's a very possibility that much of it's going to be reversed. Okay, and as you mentioned before, we're taking a step back. So what's going to happen next? You need to be paying attention to what's going on in Europe right now, in Ukraine, where we're sending billions and billions and billions of dollars, to the Ukrainian war, that is draining the possibility, of what the budget might be for domestic projects. But even more importantly, look what's going on in the Pacific at Taiwan, where the United States is building and preparing for war. One of the things that got King in trouble was he understood the connection between what was going on in the civil rights movement and what was going on in Vietnam. He got in trouble about that. I mean, people think that's why he got killed. But because he understood the universal love ethic, it's not just for my people, but it's for all people that are saved. So one thing that I think that we need to begin to understand, that we need to look beyond what is happening to us to what's happening in the world. But even more domestically, the tax on women, the abortion rights reversal that's been taking place. Just recently, when we go to the church, the Southern Baptists voted to expel Saddleback and mega churches and others because they ordained women, and allowed women to preach and to teach. And what's happened with the LGBT community? So the setbacks are taking place not just for us, but for other constituencies. So we have to understand. We have to begin to think about how we can begin to what we used to call, what I worked at the Carter Center, limited domain collaboration. What are those things that women, that LGBTQ, that the immigrant population, immigration, the next major immigration is taking place from South America, looking for a better life? What do all of us have in common? And what would our combined force and power? Because the demographics has changed. The largest demographics now in the United States is Hispanic, okay? And they have and we need to be, if things go as used to go, there'll be efforts to pit African Americans against Hispanics for the gains that they're making, the gains that we're not making, at this time. Though in fact, we have a common cause. So let me stop talking. So as we move forward, the ethical thing is a universal love ethic to understand that we have a basic connection and common interest with all people who are oppressed everywhere. And that we have to find ways in which to work together using our vote that we still do have, using our economic power that our combined forces may have to change the narrative and to change what's going on. Because why? Because what's happening is because they have been organized. They're a smaller force. They have some advantages, but they don't have others. But they're organized and they know what they want and where they're going. We have to begin to create that same kind of concept, understanding that we're not in this alone. It's not just a United States thing, but this is a worldwide thing that we need to be able to find common cause to really be able to push back and to move another step forward.
All right, let me bring it back home. That was a great history lesson you gave us. Thank you. I want you, because you can do it, because I've heard you do it. That phrase about if you change the narrative, you change the outcome. The ethical framework that we need for our country, for this country, for democracy to prevail so that everyone understands their role, how would you frame that ethical framework in the very clear, narrow perspective of moving together around a common understanding that we must do this for the sake of saving all human beings?
Right.
This is just not about people of color or women or the gay community. This is all about, I'm trying to elevate that person, an individual. I'm trying to elevate them to the essence of human beingness. Because I've seen and learned over the years, as you have, I cannot treat a human being once I identify them as a human being and understand what all that entails and goes with that. I can't treat that human being the same way I treated that individual and that person. Once I kind of understand and know that higher essence of this other human being like myself across the table from me, how I engage with them, how I interact with them, how their issues and problems become mine are different. But it takes a real conscious framing to be able to have that dialogue, because in the end, it is the age-old ethical question. What is the fair, moral, ethical treatment of all human beings? All human beings' lives matter. All human beings are equal. Now, either we believe that or we don't. There is no más o menos. There is no kind of sorta. Either one truly believes that or you don't. And if you believe it, you take on this whole new way of thinking, of acting, of fighting, of passion, of being involved to the sake of this other human being sitting to your left and your right. If you don't believe it, then you're able to do what we see being done every day to individuals and persons, because it is, to me, the old thing about being subhuman. When you can keep that human being in the old subhuman category, even in our Constitution at the time, we were not even a whole person, then I think you have a different way of processing, of rationalizing, doing what you do to this subset. Now, am I wrong on that or
no?
not?
I mean, and you stated about just as perfectly as you can, and let me get historical again. Every great movement in this country was accompanied by a great awakening.
Yes.
A spiritual outburst, and what our grandparents understood, that they were never in it alone, that they had a transcendent power, that they called on, that people called otherworldly or whatever else you want to call it, but they understood it. I also been listening to Howard Thurman lately,
Right.
who was the great African-American mystic, who was a mentor to Martin Luther King and many other civil rights leaders. And one of his basic understanding of concept related to the universal love ethic is that we are all surrounded by this life-giving force, this great spirit, this great creativity. It is everywhere that we are. but it's also inside of us and inside of you. You know,
Yep.
if we can, and those who are spiritually enlightened, you know, and who are able to connect to that transcendent force, however you want to name it, however you want to call it, can begin to, and who are able to get in touch with that spirit within inside themselves, can also see it in the other person. And that's really the ground. I think what is going, one of the things that's going to take, that I think is happening right now. You know, it's underground, it's bubbling, is that there is, and you know, for the scientific folks and the secularists, whatever. But I think that, I believe, and I'm feeling it, that the move of God will take place. It is taking place now, and I'm really to speak the narrative that it is happening. Narratives are created by people telling the story,
Right.
you know. And so this show, you know, the great event I was witness when you talked about the changing demographics, you know, and beginning to, and we don't think things happen because the only people getting news are the folks who are doing the other stuff, the evil, the badness, the killings, the constant murders. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on that gets little recognition, but that's okay. You know, this conversation that we're having right now, you know, I think is a critical conversation that needs to be broadened and expanded. You know, but I'll go back, you know, to how I began to talk about, you know, is that the understanding of the beloved community, some call it the reign of God, the kingdom of God, is not just a human activity.
Yep. So
humans participate, but but we can't take all the credit for it.
No, we can't. So let me give you a quick 30 seconds. I know that's hard for you to wrap up, because believe it or not, we're almost out of time.
Really? Oh my goodness.
It goes very quickly. So what is that one little thing that we haven't touched on that you wanted to make sure you mentioned today?
I don't know. I believe, I am firmly announcing that this is an inflection point. There's a lot of bad stuff happening, but in it, in every crisis, is opportunity.
All right.
Okay.
That's a good point.
And that this is our opportunity now to do something great.
All right. I'll take that and run with it. This is an opportunity at this inflection point to run with it and do something great. I'm gonna have to leave it at that, Fred, Dr. Smith, and we'll have to have another piece of this going forward at some point. So let me just leave a few closing thoughts in the minute I have left here. Indifference, intolerance, and justice will not stand any longer. Principles and policies must be looked at as ethical questions. It is about our common humanity. We are truly all responsible for one another. The prophetic voice that we need to speak the truth must prevail, and we must understand that we must bring light to that discussion. The darkness prevails now more than the light. And the light has to figure out a way to shine brightly and dispel the darkness if we have any hope of doing this and getting it done. I think the cornerstones right now are quite simple. Just a little design. If you draw a triangle, put the human being in the middle of the triangle, the word human being. Top of the triangle, put the word equity. To the left of the triangle, put the word empathy. The two things that make that road to equity possible is empathy. The way you get to empathy is relationships. Got to have relationships across the board. Relationships built on mutual trust and respect. Nothing happens without trust. Nobody does anything to or for individuals they do not trust. As Fred mentioned, you have to develop the loyalty that goes with that, to understand that you have together collectively a group of people who are wanting to move forward. I think there'd be three important things going forward: transparency, accountability, and trust. Transparency in all that we do and say, accountability for what we do and say and what we do not do and say, and trust that we are in this together and that we focus on the things that we need to make all this happen, which is power and people, policies, politics, personalities. All those things have to be taken into consideration to move the needle forward, because the light has to shine through. The darkness is more organized now. The darkness is more committed. The darkness is more clear with great clarity on their mission. on their reason for being. What's at stake? Whether it's fear, whether it's anger, whether it's the theory about we cannot be replaced, whatever it may be, they are focused, laser focused on what their job is to do to make sure that they survive. They see it as a survival issue. And so the question is, when you're fighting to hold on to those privileges that you unrightly have had all these years and not deserved, you're going to do everything in your power to do that. So as we move forward, we have to realize that we are in the middle of a real place in this country, different than all the other moments because of the change of demographics. The demographic change is impacting this so greatly into who now is a majority minority. And that minority status of the new unempowered majority, that's us. We may be the majority in numbers numerically, but I have to put a word in front of it, the new unempowered majority, who are battling the new minorities who have had power and understand how to yield power. We've never had power, so we don't even know what to do with it if we got it many times. How do we begin to balance this? Democracy is about balance, compromise, and negotiation. Democracy is about balance, compromise, and negotiations. For the republic to be strong, for democracy to be understood, it has to be clearly understood by everyone in a coordinated way. So the challenges we have are great. We have roadmaps that will help us. And part of the roadmaps are internal roadmaps about what we know to be true, what we know to be doing. But it begins with seeing that other entity around you as truly your human being, another human being. Truly a human being, just as equal to you, with all the rights, privileges that go with that, as you would want for yourself, and to make sure that he or she has those privileges. It is no good just to survive, nor to thrive. Human beings were meant to flourish to the fullness of their God-given potential. That's what we should be doing in service to our fellow human being. We have to go. We thank you for joining us for this segment of Dialogue Houston. Until next time, as always, be well, be safe, and peace, power, and love.